Welcome back, peeps, to another episode of the Tooth or Dare podcast. Peeps, with your peep, Irene. Hello, how are you? I hope you're having a wonderful day if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're in the car or listening to it on the go, hello to you as well. This is part 2 of our episode recorded at Voices of Dentistry with my good friend Perrin DesPortes. In episode 1, or part 1, you listened to Perrin talk about selling his family business that was a 4th generation dental distributor to a really big distributor. He stayed on to be a quite critical role, managed quite a few people, and after 15 years of being a general manager, branch manager, he went on to make some big life changes and decisions, which are discussed in this episode. Other key points he talked about, I'm reading my little notes here on the computer. He talked about his journey through building a business, the questions that he often asked himself, like, am I happy? And what should your day-to-day look like? What brought him joy? He also talked about how he envisioned these conversations happening with his family, the difficult parts of, transitioning from one career to the next. And I can say that I've had those conversations too. I mean, originally I didn't want to be a lawyer, so I had to have that tough conversation with my parents of not wanting to go to law school after getting an undergraduate degree in political science. And then I had to, decide to leave teaching and leave clinical practice, working for somebody else, to open up my own office. So I really feel deeply about all of the things that Perrin said about what it's like having a business partner, what it's like having to make these really tough decisions, what your values are and your intentions for your career and for your, ventures. So I hope you enjoy this lecture. I hope you enjoy this this part 2 with Perrin DesPortes. And I hope that I'll see you in California in a couple of weeks. I'll be attending CDA and I'll be at the Designs for Vision booth on Thursday and Friday, talking about all things loop related, infinity view loops, what types of magnifications you might consider, some of my personal experiences, and of course the podcast will be there too. We'll be recording some live podcast episodes, which are going to be really fun. So check that out. And also, last but not least, the link in my bio is going to send you to 2 webinars that I'll be doing with my friends at Spear Education. They're free. The first lecture is on, I believe, July the 27th, called The Surgical Checklist. And the motorcycle go by. On July the 27th, I'll be delivering the surgical checklist, and that will be a 1-hour lecture talking all about the things we want to know, perio and prosto related. How should we be keeping our implants clean? Should we be flossing them or using water flossers, manual toothbrushes, electric toothbrushes? Do we probe implants? All of those questions will be answered in that lecture. And then there's another lecture in August. Stay tuned. I'll share more information about that, but one step at a time. I encourage you all to register for my surgical checklist lecture. Anywho, enjoy this podcast, and I will catch you guys on the flip side. Peace out, peeps. Welcome back, peeps, to another episode of the Tooth or Dare podcast, peeps, with part 2 with Perrin DesPortes. Last episode, Perrin, you shared with us your story of your family business, how you sold it to Patterson, how you then went on and worked with Patterson, leaded, left, the conversations you had with your wife, and then you alluded to a startup, which we're going to talk about today with Polaris. We'll keep it quick because I know you got a flight to catch.
It's all right.
But I'm very interested to understand that conversation that you had about making that tough decision to leave your cushy job for a vision. And, walk me through that conversation.
Yeah, great to be back with you.
Thank you.
It's so the context was in the prior episode that while I had a pretty successful career at Patterson, it was one that I didn't see myself doing for the next 20 years of my life or however long. And I didn't want to move to Minneapolis and take a corporate job with them, and I didn't want to live life on an airplane and leave my wife and young daughter behind at the time. So, you kind of do the analysis, and that I like to say that sounds like a you problem, not a company problem. And I really wanted an opportunity to do something more entrepreneurial, where I felt like I could be a bit more in control of what the next phase of my life and career was going to be. And so it led me to launch a startup in, I guess we technically started funding it in late 2016. I left Patterson in January of 17.
Did they know, or you were kind of just side hustling it?
I was side hustling it, and I had some candid conversations, I'll say, with my boss at Patterson about, that some of the changes that had taken place in the company. I just didn't know if I was going to be there the rest of my career.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't give him anything more definitive than that, because I didn't know. And for as long as I was going to be there, I was going to give it my all. But
yeah.
So
you weren't 1 foot in, 1 foot out like we see with many.
I wouldn't say that I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I was fully committed to the team that I led at Patterson, and I owed them all that for sure. But was dabbling on some things, early in the morning, late at night, on weekends, trying to figure out if I was going to leave, what was I going to do, or what did I want to do?
What did you want to do? What did you think you wanted to do?
I thought I wanted to leave dental altogether, and I talked to a lot of people in my life about potentially an exit from Patterson, and I was trying to do the networking thing to figure out what exactly I did want to do. And one of them that I spoke with brought up something really, really important to me that I didn't realize at the time. And he said, Perrin, you've spent your entire year in the business of dentistry. That's where your tribal knowledge is. That's where your industry knowledge is. That's where all your contacts are. That's where you bring the most value. And he said, just realize that if you go to work in a different sector of the economy, be it healthcare or otherwise, you're walking away from all of that. That's exactly right. And it hit me with like a lightning bolt then, that I was like, wow, okay, that's true. And I don't know, when we talk about starting over, I don't know that I want to do that. I'd like to build off of something. And so a couple of industry colleagues and I had a vision for building a software platform that would allow dentists to broker their own practice, much like a Zillow.com does for residential real estate.
So basically the dentist puts up their property, or and you can just swipe through what's available, what amenities. Is there a tennis court next door? Like, where's the closest swimming pool?
Yeah, is there a Starbucks nearby? What's the local school system? Can you get pre-approved for a loan to buy it? I mean, see, a dual-sided platform is buyers and sellers, essentially, and we wireframe the whole thing to a great degree, which was kind of a cool process.
You blinked a lot. What is the to a great degree?
I mean, we spent a lot of hours early in the morning thinking through user interface, user engagement, how to keep people on the platform, how do we generate revenue off the platform, the stickiness of it and everything like that, buyer profiles, seller profiles, all that kind of cool stuff. And that was fun. It was really creative, and we sunk a couple of $100,000 into building that, or having a
couple of hundred, like 2, or a couple of hundred, like closer to 6.
So I'll say somewhere in the middle of that. It was enough to get your attention.
It's like when someone says 6 figures, like, what's the first of the 6 figures?
Yeah. It was a good bit of money,
okay. and enough money for you to realize that.
Well,
it wasn't going to work?
Yeah, so I left Patterson in January of 17, and there were 3 of us operating the new business, and we were fully committed to making it successful, but part of that was that we intended to launch that software platform at the end of Q1 of 2017. And when we got the beta version around March 1st or somewhere thereabouts, it was nowhere near prime time. It was nowhere near being operational, and was not just buggy, it was incomplete and not viable.
So you got rid of it?
Well,
or
we were at a point where, okay, if we're that far away from being a viable platform, what does that mean in terms of further investment, and what does that mean in terms of time? Because all of that impacts how far away you are from being able to generate revenue. Mm-hmm. And, then, like, those of us working in the business, if we're that far away from generating revenue, how far away are we from generating profit or personal income?
Yeah.
And now you start really chasing the rabbit much more clearly to say, okay, we thought this would be a year where all of us would work without income. We put money aside.
Planned and prepared. And
but we didn't know if this was going to be 2 years or 3 years. It was a little bit of an oh heck kind of a moment. And so at that point, we did a pretty major pivot. And my two partners in the business and I kind of doubled down and said, okay, if this isn't going to go, this may or may not go, but it's not going to go anytime soon. What can we do to make money? And we started focusing more on the emerging group practice space and developing some level of a consulting offering, some level of a debt capital sourcing option, as well as an opportunity to do sell-side advisory. And that really worked, and it worked quickly, and we developed some
And that's called now Polaris. That's Polaris proper.
That company was called TUSK Partners, and I left my current partner DeWalker Sinha and I left that company in March of 2021 to launch Polaris.
Okay.
A little bit of a difference of opinion with the other people working in the business over the direction of the business and what we wanted to build. And you know, when visions start to misalign, it creates fissures in a partnership. So living through what I would consider a very successful venture, but ultimately a failed partnership at TUSK has really allowed me and DeWalker to double down on what Polaris is and what we want it to be. And I would tell you, for the people who are in your audience and are entrepreneurs at heart or building businesses and thinking about doing it with a partner versus a solo venture, there's pluses and minuses to both, obviously. If you're going to do something in a partnership, you obviously want your visions and your intention to align. You want to be congruent with one another in terms of the way you think about deriving income out of the business or leaving money in the business
Financial
for growth.
Decisions
Exactly.
Are where most arguments start and end, unfortunately.
They absolutely are. And, you know, the other thing about partnerships is that DeWalker and I don't agree about everything. We're different people. We see things differently. We have, you know, at times different opinions about the growth and strategy of Polaris, but we never doubt one another that whenever we have differences of opinion, that the other is always putting the business before their personal interests. So I'm never arguing for my position against my partner because it benefits me more or because of my family needs more.
Right.
And I think that's one of the levels of trust that you have to have in a partnership that says that no matter when we disagree, the other person is advocating for what they want because they think it's in the best interest of the company, and I'm a beneficiary of that. And so that's important to really learn before you form a partnership, because if you don't, it will rear its ugly head, and it's very costly to get out of a failed partnership.
I think that's why, you know, the famous phrases of, you know, don't get into business with your family or with your friends, and it does become this relationship concern. And it's some of the most successful businesses that I know the inner workings of are those that have an outside partner that is separated from the business on perhaps the, you know, day-to-day proceedings, and maybe they don't even come to the office. They look at numbers and metrics, performance over time, or you know, as opposed to being stuck in this, like, you know, relationship kind of battle between decisions that are made from day to day. And I'll lead this question, and perhaps we can do an episode 3 and 4. I know you have a flight to catch, so I want to be very conservative with your time. One of the biggest questions that I get, so the challenge for dental hygienists to open practices, not every state or province allows it. A lot of red tape. On the transactional side, certain provinces and states won't allow the sale of an existing practice to a non-dentist.
That's right.
regardless of what your licensure is. So I was toying with the idea of purchasing a practice from a dentist that was retiring, but it required a lot of work because of this custodian agreement of who is managing the charts, and can the sale of the charts be done from a dentist to a dental hygienist, although there was no dentist in my corporation because I can't partner with one. Long story. There's a whole episode on the inner workings and transactions of my business that I'll link below. How does that work? For example, let's say I wanted to open a practice. Capital was my biggest problem. I had a dollar value written of what I needed as a personal injection for the bank to even take me seriously. So I needed $200K in liquid cash to be able to prove that I am able to sustain this for X amount of time. What happens if a dental hygienist who is savvy, let's say, business-minded and forward-thinking, wants to open a practice, but has had a variety of life changes that perhaps has led them to not be able to save as much as I have? How can someone like that work with perhaps your company? Because you did say that you help with funding and sourcing, and how does that work?
We do help with funding and sourcing funds, but it's usually more in the group practice space than in the traditional solo space. So what I would, the way I would answer that though, and your question.
It's very multifaceted, I think. So, pick and choose the line you want to draw.
It's got a legal component to it. And you're right. In most states in the United States, and I don't know the rules and regs in Canada, but in most states in the United States, dental practices, charts, and records have to be owned by a licensed dentist.
Right.
There are a few states where that's not the case, but that's the vast exception to the rule. So they're beyond just the legal construct of can or can't. You get into the funding component of it. And so dental practices, at least general dentistry practices in the United States, are 70 to 80% of the revenue is generated through dentist clinical services, and the other component being the hygiene component to it. So when banks look at
is that 70 doc, 40 hygiene? Is that the number that you just mentioned?
70, 30, 80, 20, something like that. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So banks love lending money to dentists because they're going to personally guarantee the loan.
Right.
They are licensed to provide the services. They're going to be working in that practice 3 to 4 to 5 days a week, come hell or high water, and that business is going to succeed or fail based on them. There's really no better credit profile from a lender standpoint in terms of a small business and a small business loan. And there's a great demand for dental services, so you have enough waiting
sustainability in the services that are provided under that.
So it's a really good gig from a banking standpoint. A little bit different when you are either not licensed to provide the services, in the case of like an administrative owner like me, or if you're only licensed to provide part of the services in your case. So the viability of the business takes on a different dynamic from a risk profile standpoint. And that's why when banks make lending decisions, they have all these different types of metrics, whether it's credit score or debt service coverage ratio or funded debt to EBITDA in a group practice and all that other kind of jazz. The bank is trying to ascertain what their comfort level is with the continued revenue generation of the business and the person who guaranteed the loan.
Right.
Their ability to service the debt. What's their margin for error, both on the home front and the professional front?
Right.
And that, when you're a licensed dentist, usually that profile is pretty reasonable, I would say, as long as your consumption habits aren't that great. When you're not licensed to provide the services or all of the services, that's when you get into things like the fallback position that you mentioned about, having cash reserves and or a limited funding amount based on the total value of the business.
So your primary demographic, to close before we make you miss your flight.
No, we're good for a little while.
Okay.
Yeah, for just a little bit.
Is the solo doc that perhaps has a viable practice that they've had for a little while, however many? I'm sure your analysis of what that conclusion comes to, if they're ready for you or not, that perhaps is looking to scale and open a multiple location practice. And we talked about this vaguely on a previous the other podcast. what is your opinion over creating a satellite practice? So you're unable to sustain 2 practices at the same time. Perhaps you want to transfer your associate or team members versus starting a group practice model. What are the differences between the two?
Yeah, I think when you're talking about a satellite location, it's almost like a specialist from a standpoint that you're going to divide time between 2 locations, or if in your core location you have an associate that is maybe part-time that wants to become full-time, but you either don't have the patience or the capacity in terms of treatment rooms to accommodate that without literally tripping over one another. So the ability to do a satellite location that may pull some of the patients out of the core location and have a springboard, a cornerstone, a floor of revenue to build off of and make the second location viable while freeing up some capacity, provider time and chair time in the core location is definitely a good strategy. It's sort of an iterative type of a strategy. That's different from acquiring a second location outright.
Yeah.
Because buying a second location outright has a greater degree of jeopardy with it based around what you're actually buying from the seller. And in that case, you're buying charts and records for sure, but at the same time, you're buying a legacy of systems and processes.
Their problems.
And
It's just a polite way. That was the most polite way of him saying you're buying someone else's problems. You're acquiring those employees that have been there for a long time that perhaps are overpaid.
Don't like change.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So the legacy of the seller looms large.
That's a fancy way the bankers say the problems. They call it legacy.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
So that, but that's not to say that you can't be successful doing that. There are a lot who are, and frequently we see our clients that are building groups are doing it by acquisition versus de novo. So there are practices available for sale. There's at least in the U.S., it's sort of a top-heavy segment of the population of dentists that's going to be exiting in the next 3 to 5 years. So there'll be an abundance of practices.
The baby boomer docs.
Yeah, retiring and transitioning out. And I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities to buy businesses. But when you do that, it's not just a matter of buying the business. You always want to think through what are a couple of areas of revenue that I think I can generate. You know, maybe keeping specialty services in-house, maybe a marketing plan to drive new patients, maybe putting another associate in to expand days and hours, et cetera, et cetera. And then what are some of the areas where I think I might be able to take some of the cost structure out of the business? So you don't buy a business just to maintain it.
Like what would you look at first by cost?
Well, I mean, you've got things like supplies,
overhead,
lab. You've got professional services like legal and accounting.
Sure.
If you get a group practice to some level of size and volume, you can actually start to take some of the redundant headcount out of the business by centralizing it. You probably need to be between 6 and 10 locations to make that worth your while.
Right.
But certainly that's you see group practices kind of morphing through a couple of different phases. One's the emerging group, which is kind of like, call it 2 to 5 locations, loosely put. And then the next phase is centralizing administrative services, and that's kind of the 6 to 15 location maybe. And
by centralizing, you don't mean outsourcing. You mean having your main practice and then remotely.
Well, it would be.
Or are you also outsourcing?
There would be some
services?
opportunity maybe to outsource some things, but you think about like
a centralized call center.
Yeah.
Or
so
HR.
Yeah.
Right. Time off requests and those types of things.
Legal and accounting, procurement, call center functions for
overhead. So purchasing equipment and
supplies
like that gets done and distributed through one main.
Yeah. So there, when you do that, you have the ability to create economies of scale.
Yeah.
And you also have the ability to do it more efficiently that does not require the same level of human input that it does on a practice by practice by practice basis. And obviously, if you're going to build a group, you don't have to build a 20 location group. There's nothing wrong with a 3 or 4 location group that has nice revenue characteristics and passive income for the founder. That's great, and we have a lot of clients that stop at 3 or 4 or 5 locations for that very reason. And then we have a number of others that go, from that level to full centralization to get to 20 locations. And that's a much bigger, more dynamic business.
Well, that also leads back into what Mark said yesterday about figuring out what your freedom number is.
Yeah.
And perhaps that might be the thing that you decide is how many practices do I need to have in order to hit my freedom number by this year?
Yep.
And then you continue or stay for that, legacy number that you want. Interesting. That's some really great information. And I'll link all of your information below. And I feel like this is a conversation one needs to have with themselves as a business owner of, am I happy with my one practice, or am I happy being an associate? Do I want more, and what does that look like? And it sounds like you're offering services that can help with just that initial conversation. The consulting service that you provide, I mean, I feel like you just gave me a therapy lesson and a free consulting all at the same time to come to that realization.
Well, we have a retainer-based consulting service that we offer clients that we typically work with a consulting client about 12 to 18 months, We have associate equity models and growth capital solutions and all that kind of good stuff as well. But, for the people who are in that,
early
thought,
stage.
yeah, they're in that thought process of should I or shouldn't I? Everybody else is doing it. Maybe I should do it too. That's a bad reason to build a business for sure. But we have a one-day service offering called a Discovery Day. I teach probably 80 to 90% of them, and it's one-on-one with the client. And a Discovery Day is what you might call group practice fundamentals. I mean,
a 101.
Yeah, I mean, we go through
GP 101.
Yeah, so but it's foundational knowledge that kind of connects the dots for a would-be group owner before they actually commit money and time to doing it. Yeah. And one of the things that we try to stress with those clients is, what are you trying to build and why are you trying to build it?
Yeah.
And don't think that you have a successful solo practice so it will be easy to add a second location. It will not.
No.
And the people that come and spend a day with me, I'd say that probably about 1 out of 4 elect not to build a group practice. And they may never be a client of ours, but I feel like I talked them out of what was going to be a bad decision that would cost them a lot of money and heartache.
So this one-on-one discovery, is that something that's done virtually, or
no,
we fly to you?
Yeah, they fly to Charlotte and spend the day with me. I teach out of about an 80-page PowerPoint deck, but it's really a deck that's supposed to create more conversations and questions that they didn't know to ask. And then we have the ability to whiteboard a bunch of stuff too. So, sometimes I'll teach out of the deck. We'll have conversations that might be personal and intimate in nature, financial typically, or things that they like, that they just feel like they got to know. And it's not in the deck, but I can teach about it and we'll do it all on the whiteboard. So it's a loosely structured type of a day together, but 6 to 7 hours you can cover a lot of ground, and it's we find our net promoter score ratings are huge on them, and there's a lot of value that people derive from. So I
think I want to do this with you. Yeah. Well, my husband is an accountant.
Okay.
He's a CPA. He works Royal Bank Dominions in wealth management, so he is quite familiar and does all of the accounting for our practice. So we've got a structured kind of meeting where we sit together and we talk about numbers, and we've got very nice pie charts and graphs and Excel spreadsheets. But I feel like this is a conversation that I would like to further have with you for 6 to 7 hours. So it's
we can cover a lot of ground, that's for sure. So
and at least it'll help you make a decision one way or another. And I find that really everyone wants to sell you on something, right? Like everyone wants a new client, and we're chasing new clients all the time. And I like this, that you're not chasing anyone. You're like, I'll spend a day with you. Yeah. And
we obviously charge for the service.
Of course,
but,
right. It's not, your time is not free. Interesting. Wow. Very valuable. Well, thank you for sharing this information.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you one really tough question
at
the very end. What's one thing you wish you didn't know?
What's one thing I wish I didn't know?
Take your time.
Nobody's ever asked me that before. I don't know that I've got a good answer for it.
It doesn't have to be good.
Gee, I don't know if I've got an answer for it, Irene. I mean, I'm trying to come up with something.
It doesn't have to be dental.
Yeah, or I mean, anything profound.
Someone gave me an answer yesterday that they wish that they didn't know all of the history behind jazz music. How
I don't know any
deeply
of that,
depressing it was, and it was a left field. Didn't see that one coming.
Yeah.
Or something that you learned the hard way. What's one thing that you wish you didn't have to learn the way that you did?
Well, I mean, that one would be a little bit easier, and it's relative to that failed partnership that I mentioned before. Look, we're all different people, and businesses are dynamic animals, and not everybody is wired the same way from values or intention or altruism versus self-interest standpoint. And at some level, that's what makes the world go round, But I've never been through a divorce before. I hope I never do. But a business divorce is probably not too dissimilar and can be very anxiety-provoking, heart-wrenching, emotional, and costly. And I'm better today for having been through that process. I'm a better business partner. I'm probably a better person. But I didn't enjoy going through the process, not just for the stress that it caused, but also for maybe some of the things that are brought to light. And I think that's, and for the business partner I left behind, it would probably be equally, an equally negative experience for him as well.
Right.
No one
wants their life turned upside down and public and open and dissected and
I mean, I share in the blame for some of that. Like, I am not without fault, so this is not a, you're a bad person, I'm the best person type of commentary whatsoever. Those are lessons that we learn in life at any stage of life, and hopefully we can draw some level of appreciation out of them too.
Absolutely.
So,
the light at the end.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you so much for being with me and
great.
sharing
You
this
bet.
information. All of the information that we shared below, including a transcript, will be below. And I look forward to meeting you in Charlotte and furthering this conversation. Thank you
absolutely
for your honesty. That was great.
Thanks for having me on this show. I really have enjoyed it. You're a great interviewer, and I look forward to hopefully doing it again sometime soon too.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. Bye. Peace out, peeps.